The bridge of the UES Prometheus shook as another blast hit the shields. Warning lights flashed red across every console. Smoke filled the air, and the screams of wounded crew members mixed with the sound of alarms. Commander Lyra Chen gripped her command chair and stared at the main screen. Outside, the darkness of space was filled with enemy ships. Thousands of them. The Vylori Dominion had sent their entire extinction fleet to finish what they started. Behind the Prometheus, the last human colony on Nova Terra burned. Millions of people were dying down there, and she could do nothing to stop it. "Commander, shields at 12%, her tactical officer shouted. "We cannot take another direct hit." Lyra closed her eyes for a moment. She had fought the Vylori for 15 years. She had watched them burn Earth's colonies one by one. She had seen friends die, ships destroyed, and entire worlds turn to ash. The Vylori did not want to defeat humanity. They wanted to erase it from existence. The Prometheus was the last hope, the most advanced warship humanity had ever built. 12,000 souls aboard, including scientists, soldiers, and families who had nowhere else to go. They were supposed to protect Nova Terra. They were supposed to win. But the Vylori had come with everything they had. "Commander," the navigation officer said, his voice shaking, "I found something. There is an unstable rift forming near the nebula edge. If we jump into it, we might be able to draw the Vylori fleet away from the colony." "Might?" Lyra asked. "The rift is not stable. I do not know where it leads. I do not know if we will survive the jump." Lyra looked at the screen again. The Vylori flagship was moving toward Nova Terra. In minutes, they would begin the final bombardment. The colony had no defenses left. 20 million people would die, unless she did something impossible. "All hands," she said into the ship-wide communicator. Her voice was calm, steady, the voice of someone who had already made peace with death. "This is Commander Chen. We are going to make a jump into unknown space. The chances of survival are low. But if we do this, the Vylori will follow us. They want the Prometheus more than they want the colony. We can save those people." She paused. The bridge was silent. Everyone was looking at her. "I will not order anyone to do this," she continued, "but I am asking you to trust me. I am asking you to be human. To fight for something bigger than ourselves." No one moved to the escape pods. No one protested. They all knew what this meant. They all chose to stay. Lyra felt something warm in her chest. Pride. Love for these people who would fly into the unknown with her. "Navigation, plot the course. All power to engines." The Prometheus turned away from Nova Terra and accelerated toward the nebula. Behind them, the Vylori fleet hesitated. Then, just as Lyra had predicted, they followed. The Vylori commanders wanted the Prometheus destroyed. They had been hunting this ship for years. They would not let it escape. "The rift is ahead," the navigation officer said. 30 seconds to jump point." The ship shook again. More alarms, more damage reports, but they kept flying. On the Vylori flagship, a young officer named Catharin watched the human ship with something strange in his heart. He had been taught that humans were weak, inferior, animals that needed to be destroyed for the good of the galaxy. But this ship, this single wounded vessel, was flying straight into death to save its people. That was not weakness. That was something else. Something his people did not have a word for. "They are insane," his commander laughed. "They fly to their own destruction." Catharin said nothing, but he did not look away. On the Prometheus, the rift filled the entire screen. It was beautiful and terrible at the same time. Colors that should not exist swirled together. Energy crackled around its edges. It looked like a door to somewhere else, or maybe nowhere at all. 10 seconds, the navigation officer said. Lyra stood up from her chair. She wanted to face this standing. 5 seconds. She thought of Earth. She thought of the blue oceans and green forests she had seen only in pictures. She thought of all the humans who would live because of what she was about to do. Jump! The Prometheus entered the rift. Reality twisted. The ship stretched and compressed at the same time. Crew members screamed as physics broke around them. Light became sound. Time became space. Everything became nothing. And then they were gone. Behind them, the rift collapsed in a massive explosion of energy. 300 Vylori ships were destroyed instantly. The rest of the fleet stopped, unable to follow. On Nova Terra, the survivors looked up at the sky. The Vylori bombardment never came. The enemy fleet, confused and damaged, retreated to regroup. 20 million people lived because one ship chose to disappear. The galaxy searched for the Prometheus for decades. They found nothing. No wreckage, no signals, no bodies. The ship had simply vanished, swallowed by something that no one understood. Humanity mourned their heroes. They built memorials and told stories about the brave crew who sacrificed everything. But as the years passed, the story became legend. And legend became myth. And myth became a children's tale that no one really believed anymore. The Vylori declared victory. Humanity was broken. Confined to a single star system, they were marked as a dying species by the Galactic Concord. The other alien races looked at humans with pity and contempt. They were failures, relics of a species that almost mattered. But somewhere, in a place that existed between dimensions, the Prometheus was not dead. The 12,000 souls aboard were not gone. They had been taken somewhere else, somewhere that would change them forever. They would return, and when they did, the galaxy would learn what it truly meant to underestimate humanity. 603 years had passed since the Prometheus disappeared. The galaxy had changed in ways that would have shocked Commander Chen and her crew. The Vylori Dominion, the empire that had nearly destroyed humanity, was gone. They had torn themselves apart in civil wars and rebellions. Their great fleets were dust. Their proud cities were ruins. The species that had burned human colonies for sport now begged for scraps at the edge of civilized space. But humanity had not risen from the ashes. Instead, they had been forgotten. The Galactic Concord now ruled known space. It was controlled by the Siveth Collective, a race of tall, silver-skinned beings who believed they were the natural leaders of all life. Beside them stood the Meridian Trade Guilds, creatures who looked like floating jellyfish and cared only about profit and power. Humans were allowed to exist. That was all. They were confined to a single star system, Earth and her 3 remaining colonies, 8 billion people trapped in a cage of politics and contempt. Ambassador David Okonkwo walked through the great halls of the conquered station. He was an old man now, with gray hair and tired eyes. He had spent 40 years fighting for humanity's voice in this place, 40 years of being ignored, insulted, and dismissed. Today was another petition day. Humanity wanted permission to expand to a new star system. Their population was growing. Their resources were limited. They needed room to breathe. The council chamber was massive. Representatives from 100 species sat in floating platforms around a central stage. David stood on that stage, alone, looking up at faces that did not care about him. The human petition for expansion is denied, the Siveth High Speaker announced, before David could even finish his presentation. Your species has not demonstrated the capability for responsible colonization. Perhaps in another century you may try again. Laughter echoed through the chamber. A Meridian delegate made a joke in his own language. More laughter. David stood there, his hands shaking. Not from fear, from rage. Rage that he had learned to hide behind a diplomat's smile. Thank you for your consideration, he said. The words tasted like poison. He left the chamber and walked to the observation deck. Through the window, he could see Earth in the distance. A pale blue dot, the home of a species that the galaxy had written off as failures. His communicator buzzed. It was his daughter. "I heard what happened," Captain Amara Okonkwo said. Her voice was tight with anger. "The same answer as always." "The same answer as always," David agreed. Amara commanded the ESV Defiant, humanity's only patrol vessel. It was an old ship, older than David himself. Its systems were outdated. Its weapons were weak. But it was all they had. "A Meridian merchant called my ship a museum piece today," Amara said. "He offered to buy it as a collector's item." "What did you say?" "I told him my museum piece could still put a hole in his cargo bay if he did not move out of my patrol route." David smiled. His daughter had his stubbornness. Maybe that was all humanity had left. Stubbornness and pride. Far away, on a forgotten moon in abandoned Velori space, an old alien sat alone in a room filled with ancient records. Keth Aaron had lived for over 700 years. His people could live for 1,000 if they were careful. But he felt older than his years. The weight of memory made every day feel like a century. He had never stopped thinking about the Prometheus, the human ship that flew into the impossible to save its people. He had watched it disappear. He had seen something in that moment that changed him forever. The Valori had been monsters. Ketharin knew that now. His people had committed genocide for pride and pleasure, and he had been part of it. A small part, but still a part. For 600 years he had searched for any sign of the Prometheus. He had studied the rift. He had analyzed every piece of data from that day. Everyone told him the ship was destroyed. Everyone told him to let go. But Ketharin believed something different. The rift had not been a natural phenomenon. It had been a door, and doors could open both ways. Tonight, as he reviewed old sensor logs for the 1,000th time, he found something new. A pattern in the background radiation. A signal so faint that no normal scanner would detect it. But Ketharin had been looking for 6 centuries. He knew what to look for. The signal was coming from beyond the edge of known space, from somewhere that should not exist. His old heart began to beat faster. "You are still out there," he whispered to the empty room. "Somewhere. Somehow. You survived." He thought about telling the Concorde, but they would not listen. They never listened about humans. He thought about telling humanity, but what could they do? They had no ships, no power, no way to investigate. So Ketharin did what he had done for centuries. He waited. He watched. He kept the faith that no one else would keep. Somewhere in the galaxy, something was waking up. Something that had been gone for a very long time. The old Valori could feel it in his bones. The Prometheus was coming home, and when it arrived, everything would change. On Earth, children still told stories about the ghost ship that saved humanity. They played games where they pretended to be Commander Chen, flying into the unknown. Their parents smiled sadly and told them it was just a story, just a myth. Heroes like that did not exist anymore. But myths have a way of becoming real when the universe decides it is time, and the universe had decided. The quiet centuries were about to end. The first disappearance was a Seveth mining expedition. 40 ships, working at the edge of explored space, simply stopped transmitting. The Concorde sent investigators. They found nothing. No wreckage, no bodies, no explanation. The second was a Meridian trade convoy. 100 vessels carrying goods worth more than some planets. They entered a jump corridor and never came out on the other side. The Meridian guilds panicked. They hired mercenaries to search. The mercenaries disappeared too. Then an entire conquered patrol fleet vanished. 300 warships with the best crews in the galaxy. Gone in a single night. Fear spread like a disease. The conquered council met in emergency sessions. They argued about what was happening. Some said it was a new species from beyond the galaxy. Others said it was a weapon from a forgotten war. A few whispered that the universe itself was breaking. Captain Amara Okonkwo watched the chaos from her old ship. The Defiant was patrolling near human space when the emergency broadcasts started flooding every channel. She had never seen the galaxy so afraid. "What do you think is out there?" her first officer asked. "I do not know," Amara said. "But something tells me we are about to find out." She was right. The Prometheus appeared above Concordia Prime, the capital world of the Galactic Concord, at exactly noon local time. Every sensor on the planet detected it at once. Every alarm in the system screamed, but this was not the Prometheus that had vanished 6 centuries ago. The original ship had been 2 kilometers long. A powerful warship, yes, but still just a ship. What appeared in the sky was something else entirely. It was the size of a small moon. Its hull glowed with colors that hurt to look at. Energy fields surrounded it like the rings of a gas giant. It moved without engines, without visible propulsion, as if reality itself was carrying it forward. The conquered defense fleet mobilized. 5,000 ships formed a wall between the visitor and the planet. Their weapons charged, their shields activated. Every captain waited for orders, and then the visitor spoke. The voice came through every speaker, every communicator, every device capable of receiving signals. It was calm, female, human, and somehow, impossibly, it was familiar to anyone who had ever heard the old recordings. "This is Commander Lyra Chen of the United Earthship Prometheus. We apologize for the confusion caused by our scouting vessels. We needed to test our systems after such a long time away." Silence. Complete, total silence across the entire system. "We went somewhere else," Chen continued. "We learned things. We grew in ways that are difficult to explain, but we never forgot where we came from. We never forgot what happened to our people. And we remember everything you did to humanity while we were gone." On Concordia Prime, the Siveth High Speaker collapsed into his seat. His silver skin had turned pale gray. This was impossible. The humans were supposed to be extinct by now. A dying species. A joke. In her small ship, Amara Okonkwo listened to the broadcast with tears running down her face. The children's story was real. The myth was alive. The Prometheus had come home. "All Concord vessels, stand down your weapons," Chen said. "We are not here to destroy, but we will defend ourselves if attacked. And I promise you, you do not want to see what we can do now." The Concord fleet did not stand down. The Siveth commander, driven by pride and fear, gave the order to fire. 10,000 weapons lit up the darkness of space. Missiles, energy beams, kinetic rounds. Everything they had. None of it worked. The attacks passed through the Prometheus like light through water. They did not hit shields. They did not bounce off armor. They simply went through, as if the ship existed in a different layer of reality. "That was unwise," Chen said. Her voice was still calm, but now there was something cold in it. "Let me show you something." The Prometheus glowed brighter. A beam of pure white light shot from its core and touched a nearby moon. Nothing violent happened, no explosion, no destruction. The moon simply moved. It shifted in its orbit, pushed aside as easily as a child moves a toy. "We can do that to your planets," Chen said. "To your stars, to anything we choose. But we did not come here for destruction. We came to give you a choice." On his forgotten moon, Ketharan watched the broadcast with ancient eyes. The humans had returned. They had become something beyond anything he had imagined, and now, finally, the galaxy would have to answer for what it had done. He began to prepare for a journey. He had to go to them. He had to face what he had been part of all those centuries ago. Ambassador David Okonkwo stood in his office on Earth, watching the sky. He could not see the Prometheus from here, but he knew it was up there. The ship that had saved humanity 600 years ago had returned to save them again. But this time, it would not sacrifice itself. This time, it had the power to make things right. His communicator buzzed. It was a direct transmission from the Prometheus, from Commander Chen herself. "Ambassador Okonkwo," she said, "I am told your grandmother's grandmother was on my ship when we disappeared. I think it is time for a family reunion. Will you come aboard?" David's hands trembled. History was not just being made. History was being rewritten. "Yes," he said. "Yes, Commander, I am on my way." The galaxy had spent 6 centuries forgetting humanity. Now humanity had returned with power beyond imagination, and nothing would ever be the same again. Ambassador David Okonkwo stepped off the shuttle and onto the deck of the Prometheus. His legs were shaking. His heart was beating so fast he thought it might burst. Behind him, Captain Amara Okonkwo followed, her eyes wide with wonder. The interior of the ship was nothing like what the old records described. It was vast and beautiful, filled with soft light that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. The walls looked like they were made of living crystal. The air smelled like flowers and rain and something else that David could not name. A woman walked toward them. She looked young, maybe 30 years old, with dark hair and calm eyes. She wore a simple white uniform with no decorations except for a small earth symbol on her shoulder. "Ambassador Okonkwo," she said, her voice the same one that had broadcast to the entire galaxy. "I am Commander Lyra Chen. Welcome to the Prometheus." David's mind struggled to understand. This woman was over 600 years old. She looked younger than his daughter. "How?" he managed to say. "How is this possible?" Chen smiled. It was a kind smile, patient and understanding. "That is a long story, but I think you deserve to hear it. Please, walk with me." They walked through corridors that seemed to stretch forever. Other crew members nodded as they passed. They looked human, but there was something different about them. They moved with a strange grace. Their eyes seemed to see more than normal eyes should. "When we entered the rift," Chen began, "we expected to die, but death did not come. Instead, we were pulled into another dimension, a realm where the rules of physics were different, where time moved in strange ways." She stopped at a window. Outside, instead of stars, there was a view of impossible colors and shapes, things that looked like galaxies made of pure thought. "For you, 600 years passed. For us, it was 60,000 years." Amara gasped. David felt dizzy. 60,000 years, Chen repeated. "We had time to build civilizations, to make mistakes and learn from them, to grow in ways that humans were never supposed to grow." "But you are still human," David said. "You look human. You sound human." "We are human," Chen agreed. "That never changed, but we became more than we were. The dimension we entered was not empty. There were beings there, entities of pure energy who had evolved beyond physical form millions of years ago. They tested us, challenged us, and when we proved ourselves, they shared their knowledge." She touched the wall, and it became transparent. They could see into a massive chamber below, where thousands of people worked with machines that looked like solid light. "We learned to reshape matter with thought, to move through dimensions like you move through rooms, to live without aging, without disease, without the limitations that once defined human existence." "Why did you come back?" Amara asked. "With power like this, you could go anywhere, do anything. Why return to a galaxy that forgot you?" Chen's expression changed. The kindness remained, but something harder appeared beneath it, something that had waited 60,000 years. "Because we never forgot," she said. "We never forgot the colonies that burned, the children who died screaming while the Valori laughed, the centuries when our people were treated like animals by species who thought themselves superior." She turned to face them directly. "We did not come for revenge. Revenge is small. We came for justice, and we came to offer a choice." They entered a great hall where a council was gathering. Representatives from every major species in the Concord were being brought aboard. The Siveth looked terrified. The Meridian looked calculating. And in the corner, an ancient Velori sat alone, his head bowed. "That is Ketharan," Chen said, noticing David's gaze. "He was there when we disappeared. He has spent 6 centuries searching for us, carrying guilt that most of his kind never felt." "What will happen to him?" David asked. "That depends on him, on all of them." Chen raised her voice so everyone could hear. "The Galactic Concord committed crimes against humanity. You allowed genocide. You profited from our suffering. You laughed when we asked for help." The aliens shifted uncomfortably. The Siveth High Speaker tried to speak, but Chen silenced him with a look. "But we are not here to destroy you. Destruction teaches nothing. Instead, I offer you the same gift we received: evolution, transcendence, the chance to become more than you are." She gestured, and images appeared in the air. Worlds beyond imagination, realms where thought became reality, futures that made the current galaxy look like a child's sandbox. "We will open gates to the higher dimensions. Any species willing to grow, to change, to embrace what lies beyond the limits of flesh and matter is welcome to join us. But there is a condition." The room was silent. "You must acknowledge what was done. You must face the truth of your history. Not for punishment, but for growth. No species can evolve while it lies to itself." Ketharan stood up. His old body trembled, but his voice was clear. "I acknowledge it. The Velori committed genocide. I was part of it. I do not ask for forgiveness. I only ask for the chance to become something better than what I was." Chen looked at him for a long moment. Then she nodded. "That is all we ask of anyone. The willingness to become better." David Okonkwo watched as the most powerful beings in the galaxy faced the truth of their past. He thought of all the years humanity had spent being dismissed and ignored, all the petitions denied, all the insults endured. His people had been waiting for 600 years, and now, finally, the waiting was over. Humanity would lead the way to the stars, not as conquerors, but as guides, as the species that had suffered most and learned to transform that suffering into something beautiful. The future had arrived, and it spoke with a human voice. 1 year had passed since the Prometheus returned. The galaxy was no longer the same place. Some species had accepted Commander Chen's offer immediately. They were tired of the old ways, tired of wars and politics and fear. They wanted to become something more. Human teachers guided them through the first steps of transformation, helping them understand concepts that would have seemed like magic before. Other species refused. The Siveth collective was divided. Half of them embraced the new path. The other half retreated to their home systems, convinced that humanity's power was a trick or a trap. They could not accept that the species they had dismissed for centuries was now leading the galaxy forward. Captain Amara Okonkwo stood on the bridge of her new ship. It was still called the Defiant, but nothing else about it remained the same. The Prometheus engineers had rebuilt it from the inside out. Her old museum piece could now outrun and outfight any vessel in the Concord fleet. Not that there was much of a Concord fleet anymore. "Captain," her first officer said, "we are receiving a distress signal. It is the Siveth War Fleet. They are requesting emergency assistance." Amara raised an eyebrow. "The same fleet that called my ship a museum piece?" "The same." She should have felt satisfaction, revenge for all the years of insults and dismissals. But that feeling did not come. Instead, she felt something else, something that the Prometheus crew had taught her over the past year. "Set a course to assist them," she said. "Whatever happened, they need help." What had happened was simple. The Siveth Collective, the portion that refused to accept humanity's offer, had decided to attack the Prometheus directly. 10,000 ships, the largest fleet assembled in centuries, fired everything they had at the human vessel. Amara arrived to find the battle already over. The Prometheus floated undamaged, surrounded by Siveth ships that had powered down their weapons. There was no destruction, no debris, no death. Commander Chen appeared on the communication screen. "Captain Okonkwo, thank you for coming." "What happened?" Amara asked. "They attacked us. We responded." Chen's expression was calm, but there was sadness in her eyes. Not with weapons, with truth. Amara did not understand at first, but when the Siveth commanders began broadcasting, she learned what the Prometheus had done. Every Siveth in that fleet had experienced, in a single instant, the full weight of what humanity had endured. Every death, every burning colony. Every child who had cried for help while Siveth politicians voted to deny humanity resources. Every human who had starved while Siveth merchants raised prices on essential goods. They had felt it all, not as information, but as experience, as if it had happened to them personally. The Siveth admiral appeared on the broadcast, his silver face wet with tears that his species was not supposed to be able to shed. "We did not understand," he said. "We thought we were better. We thought you were nothing. We were wrong. We were so terribly wrong." He surrendered unconditionally, not because he was afraid of destruction, but because he could not face his own conscience after learning the truth. In the days that followed, the remaining resistance collapsed. Species that had held out against the new path now came forward. Humbled and changed, the galaxy was transforming, one mind at a time. Ambassador David Okonkwo spent his final years aboard the Prometheus, learning from the crew who had been gone for so long. He met his great-great-grandmother, a woman who had been a young engineer when the ship disappeared. She looked younger than him now. She told him stories about the old Earth, about the world that existed before the wars. "Do you ever regret it?" he asked her one day. "The sacrifice? The 60,000 years you spent away from home?" She smiled and looked out at the stars. "We saved 20 million people that day. And when we came back, we saved billions more. Not through destruction, but through understanding. How could I regret that?" David died peacefully at the age of 92, surrounded by family from both the old world and the new. His last words were, "Tell the children the story. Tell them what we became." Amara told the story. She became the bridge between old humanity and new, the voice that helped her people understand what they were becoming. Under her guidance, Earth's population began the process of transformation. Not everyone chose to change, that was allowed. But those who did discovered possibilities they had never imagined. The gates opened above every world that asked for them. Portals to dimensions beyond normal space, pathways to realms where thought and reality were the same thing. Humanity went first, as Chen had promised. They had earned it. On the day of the Great Ascension, billions gathered to watch. The Prometheus hung in the sky above Earth, glowing like a second sun. Around it, thousands of smaller ships waited to guide the first volunteers into the higher realms. Amara stood on the Prometheus bridge beside Commander Chen. They looked out at the planet that had given birth to their species, the pale blue dot that had almost been forgotten by the galaxy. "They thought we vanished," Chen said. "They thought we died. But humans do not disappear, Captain. We transform. We adapt. We become." "What are we becoming?" Amara asked. Chen turned to her, and for a moment, Amara saw something in her eyes, something ancient and infinite and full of love for every soul that had ever lived on that little blue world. "We are becoming what we were always meant to be," Chen said. "The guides, the teachers, the ones who show the way. The universe is vast and full of wonders that most species cannot imagine. But humans can imagine anything. That is our gift. That is what we share." The gates opened. Light poured through from somewhere beyond space and time. The first volunteers stepped forward, leaving behind the lives they had known and embracing something new. Humanity led the way into infinity. They had been forgotten. They had been dismissed. They had been called a dying species, a failed experiment, a joke. But they had returned. They had brought power the galaxy never imagined, and they had used that power not to destroy, but to uplift. In the end, that was the most human thing of all. The stars had never looked so bright.